Today's world is full of opinions on how people should act, think, talk, behave, and live in general. It feels like the media today is full of pain, death, depression, and pessimism. This is tearing down our mental health and leaving us bare. The Dalai Lama, in his book, Ethics of the New Millennium, offers a new perspective on how we should look at the world, our lives, and those around us in this new, changing time. Hi, welcome to Ethics with Ari. Today, we will discuss my ethics and how it relates to the Dalai Lama in our new, fast-paced world. To start this episode, I will lay out the Dalai Lama's main beliefs, which align with my personal beliefs, and use real-world and personal examples to further explain each idea. The Dalai Lama makes an excellent argument for why we should have a spiritual revolution, which should be completed by better understanding ourselves in the service of others and distancing ourselves from materialism. Through this spiritual revolution, he claims that people will better be able to take responsibility for the effect of their actions on others, and the world will be better as a whole because of it. I personally agree with a lot of these topics, and so now I'm going to go more in depth about each of these three main points. Firstly, the Dalai Lama proposes that we should have a spiritual revolution. By this, he does not mean that people need to find religion, though that can be beneficial to some. As stated on page 23 of his book, Ethics of the New Millennium, the Dalai Lama sees spiritual practice from revolution as acting out of concern for others' well-being. He also says that to experience this spiritual revolution, we must change and transform ourselves into a space where we are more easily transformed again. This may sound confusing at first, but in reality what he means is we should be more willing to listen to others, hear new perspectives, and change ourselves around new information. Additionally, he writes that this spiritual revolution is an orientation from self towards a wider community of beings. By caring for others, this spiritual revolution can and should cultivate kindness, compassion, and empathy, whether people are religious or not. A recent study in Psychology Today indicates that people worldwide are increasingly embracing individualism. This means that individuals are becoming more self-reliant and independent as opposed to being a part of a collective. In contrast, collectivist cultures emphasize community and family, promoting teamwork over solo efforts. When you consider this alongside findings that highlight a growing trend in narcissism, it paints a picture of a society that is becoming more self-absorbed and less connected to others, in addition to a society that is becoming increasingly more depressed. This is the opposite of what the Dalai Lama would want to happen. He argues that a spiritual revolution must happen to make people more interconnected, not self-orientated. I think that the Dalai Lama makes an excellent point on why we should orientate ourselves towards people rather than ourselves, especially with the rise in narcissism that has come along with how obsessed everyone now is with their phones and being online. I think it's more important than ever to turn towards people and towards the community as a whole instead of being more individualistic. I personally have noticed this myself. When I find that I am happier, it's because I'm with people and have good relationships with people, and it makes me happier. And I know that a large part of that is definitely because I am a people person and I'm an optimist, but I think that a large part of this is also because we need that relationship with other people to actually function well as a society and be happy overall. And to continue relating this to a real-world example, people won't have motivation to fight against things, for example, climate change, or accept refugees from other countries if they are in this me-first mindset that comes along with being more self-centered and orientating yourself and your thinking around yourself. And so the Dalai Lama argues that by having a spiritual revolution where we aim to help others in life, and that's one of our main goals, then we will be significantly more happy because we will have found this love within ourselves, and then we can be happier as a society as a whole because now we're caring for others and we're working together, and that's benefiting others and benefiting ourselves. Supporting his point that we should all become more interconnected, in Chapter 1 of Ethics of the New Millennium, the Dalai Lama teaches on modern living and how it demands we need less and less from other people. He claims that because of new advancements in technology, we rely on each other less and less for support, which in turn encourages us to think that because others are not important for our own happinesses, someone else's happiness is not important to oneself. He uses farming as an example, where before people needed to call on their neighbors or family for help during harvest. Now this is just done by phoning contractors and with machines. No longer is a strong bond needed for these farmers to call upon help, and so they don't create these relationships and overall will be more unhappy in life. Another argument in the Dalai Lama's book is that we need to better understand ourselves on the inside emotionally. Genuine happiness comes from inner peace, which we achieve through compassion and ethical living. He claims that knowledge alone cannot bring happiness in the same way as inner development can. Though we gain a lot of knowledge as society advances, the Dalai Lama claims that this can, quote, cause us to lose touch with the wider reality of human experience and in particular on our dependence on others, quote. In order to find inner peace and development internally, the Dalai Lama encourages nurturing feelings like love, patience, forgiveness, humility, and generosity. These emotions naturally guide people to act kindly and ethically towards others. When you focus on building these feelings inside of yourself, it becomes much easier to behave in ways that help rather than harm. He warns about the dangers of emotions like anger, hatred, greed, jealousy, and fear. These emotions can cloud our judgment and lead us to hurt others or ourselves. Instead of letting them control us, the Dalai Lama teaches us that we should recognize them when they arise and gently work on not letting them to drive our actions. He claims that we must have well-being within ourselves before we can act to help others with reason and compassion. There are no clear external values that can bring inner peace and well-being, but factors like love and the others that I just stated can indeed help. It reminds me of that old thought path of like, you shouldn't date or you shouldn't be with other people until you know yourself. And I think finding that inner peace is exactly what that is. Knowing yourself and knowing who you are before you push that onto someone else, and then using that inner peace that you have found to build a better society as a whole. Another very intriguing argument made by the Dalai Lama is in regards to materialism and how it has not aided our journey towards inner peace. He uses the observation that those living in more developed countries are usually less happy and less fulfilled than those living in less developed countries. The Dalai Lama does not find an issue with materialism itself, but rather, as he says on page 51, quote, the underlying assumption is that full satisfaction can arise from gratifying the senses alone, quote. The Dalai Lama says humans are able to experience deep happiness through the senses more so than other creatures, but that these emotions through the senses will not give the happiness that we are actually looking for. Material goods will only give us these temporary joys through the senses, and he claims that real happiness isn't found in money, fame, or possessions, but it's found in the calm, compassionate mind. By developing positive inner qualities not based on materialism, a person becomes more resilient, peaceful, and joyful, no matter what's happening around them. Near the bottom of page 52, the Dalai Lama quotes an ancient Indian writer who remarked, quote, indulging our senses and drinking salt water are alike. The more we partake, the more our desire will thirst and grow. He also compares this to a drug addict who, once they get a hit of whatever they're addicted to, they just want more and more. Once you get some of these happiness and senses from the material goods, all you'll want is more and more, and that's not actually going to create happiness. It's just forming a new type of addiction, but to material goods instead of something like drugs. Material goods don't bring us real happiness. That much has now become clear. If it did, then why would millionaires or billionaires be sad? They have all they could ever need, but after all, money doesn't buy happiness, and that's really what the Dalai Lama This also makes me think
point here.
that idea that we should save money now so that we can travel when we retire. Yes, it is important to enjoy retirement, but this delayed gratification based on material wealth is going to provide far less fulfillment than truly experiencing life in whatever way makes you happy on the inside. Form relationships, learn yourself, travel the world. You only live once, and it is crucial that you live your life seeking as much joy as you can find in this one life without relying too heavily on materialistic ideals to give you artificial satisfaction. Just today, I was speaking with one of my friends who is actually in Death of God about experiencing life the fullest that you can now. You don't know when you are going to die. And so I think that everyone should be as happy as they can and try and live life in whatever way brings them the most true joy. Not through material satisfaction, but true joy. Because, okay, you can save all the money that you want for your retirement, but if you get cancer when you're 40, you will be so much happier that you spent your life traveling, experiencing, living life, making relationships, being happy, than just waiting for this delayed gratification to hit when you're 60 years old. And yes, I still think it's very important to have a retirement account. I sure do have a retirement account, and I'm trying to save up money for that. But I think it's also important to experience life while you're young, because you're never going to be 18 again. You're never going to be 19 again. You're never going to be this age, this malleable age where you can change yourself for the better and make your life into what you want it to be. And this is why I risked going into debt to move to DC, to pursue the degree I wanted, which is not looked at very highly back in Iowa. This is why I'm doing the Global Bachelor's program. There are more important things in life than material wealth and fulfilling these senses with the artificial feeling that you get from material wealth. Building inner peace and joy is far, far more important. Before we bring this episode of Ethics with Ari to a close, please listen to this short ad. Tired of your friends thinking the mall in DC is a shopping center? Want to sound smart and smug at brunch? Then boy, do we have a podcast for you. Distinctly Speaking, your weekly dose of monuments, mayhem, and mildly accurate history.
We cover it all, from presidential scandals to why squirrels here look like they pay rent.
Learn how to navigate the metro without looking like a tourist, and how to survive brunch with a political science major.
Spoiler, just nod and say, totally, Hamilton was underrated.
So subscribe to Districtly Speaking, because if you're going to live in a swamp built on drama, you might as well laugh about it.
And no, we still haven't seen the pandas.
Welcome back to Ethics with Ari. Now, for this section of the podcast, I want to address a couple of questions given to me by some of my peers. So this part's going to be a little bit more off the dome. I just am going to say the questions that I have written down, and then I'm going to go ahead and start with my answer, unscripted, of how I connect to the Dalai Lama and how my personal beliefs specifically are attached to each of his ideals. So the first question I'm going to answer is, how does the concept of universal responsibility shape the Dalai Lama's vision for global ethics, and how does this relate to me in choosing my career path in international affairs? Universal responsibility for the Dalai Lama is just, I believe, the idea of cultivating compassion for people who aren't directly in front of you. So by this I mean future generations. So for climate change, okay, trying to fix the world because future generations are going to benefit if you do fix the world, or for refugees in other countries who need help. And I think it's also something that we've seen a huge lack of in our society as a whole. And our government, even today, I believe, is trying to take a step back and be less responsible for other people's actions. And this counts on the individual basis too. When you care about others all around you, that is universal responsibility. When you take responsibility to bring them joy, that is universal responsibility. And I think it fosters a sense of shared humanity between people that can, in fact, help us have like a more peaceful world, that can make people more happy to be around and more fulfilled overall. And this has really drove me towards my career in international affairs. When I was an exchange student in Germany, I took a class with 20 refugees from a number of different countries: Turkey, Ukraine, Jordan, and all of these people had such incredible life stories and heartbreaking life stories. And seeing them face to face in front of me, I was like, okay, I have to do something to help these children, that are in all these other countries. And if all of us just had this intrinsic feeling and actually did just help people without having to go in person, without having to have that in-person, face-to-face experience where you learn, I should do something I should change that inspires you. If people didn't need that, then the world would be a much better place and a much more peaceful place. And I hope that in my future career, I can make it a lot easier for people to feel that universal responsibility that the Dalai Lama says does in fact shape global ethics. But I can just do all I can, and all I can is what I'm doing now, joining, hopefully, who knows, maybe the Peace Corps in the future, and trying to put myself in a mindset where I can feel universally responsible even when I don't see someone directly in front of me. In a world where we're constantly bombarded with messages about who to be, what to buy, and how to live, the Dalai Lama's Ethics for the New Millennium offers a much-needed rest. His vision of a spiritual revolution, one based on compassion, inner peace, and genuine human connection, pushes back against the noise, materialism, and isolationist of modern life. The Dalai Lama reminds us that lasting happiness doesn't come from external success or wealth, but from cultivating kindness, humility, and self-awareness. His teachings don't just speak to my values, they are them. In this focus on empathy, global responsibility, and emotional intelligence, I find the same drive that has led me to pursue international affairs in his writings. I believe, like the Dalai Lama, that ethical living means recognizing our shared humanity and that we all have a responsibility to care not only for ourselves, but for others across the world, regardless of where you are at. In a field where decisions affect millions, ethics must come first, and that's why I chose a path where I can work across borders to promote peace, justice, and understanding in similar methods as to what the Dalai Lama would in fact want. The Dalai Lama's ethics aren't abstract ideals, they're real, actionable values for a better world, and they're part of why I'm here studying international affairs in the city on this journey, because change starts within, yes, but it doesn't stop there. Hello, I'm recording this after I did a lot of the rest of the podcast, but I just wanted to put in a little note to just say thank you for having us read this book, because even just making this podcast, I would flip through to random pages of this book to try and get an idea of, okay, is this where I want to cite from, or what's the idea at this part? And just reading the words were so beautiful, and I think that the Dalai Lama does such an incredible job summarizing my ethics and being so clear with everything. And so because of that, I decided to make this podcast just truly about my personal ethics. So very much personal essay, but personal podcast about my personal ethics and how that's reflected in the Dalai Lama. But thank you very much.